What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Movies That Make You podcast, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're a catalyst for meaningful conversations. I'm Jonathan Sprang, and I go by Sprang. And most weeks, we dive into movies to watch in preparation for the new releases hitting theaters. But we don't stop there. We explore the morals, the deeper ideas, and the life lessons that these films have to offer. This week, we've got my buddy Grayson on. We are going to be talking all things vampires, Dracula, Robert Eggers movies, all because he has a new movie coming out on Christmas Day called Nosferatu. The original Nosferatu was the black and white silent film back in the 1920s, and it was the first Dracula on screen. And so this is going to be a retelling of that story, and we are super stoked for it. We have a lot of good fun talking about it, so hope you enjoy this episode. You can follow our movie journey and join the conversation on Instagram at Movies That Make You, and check out our lists on Letterboxd at I Am Spring. You'll find the movies that make you laugh, the movies that make you cry, the movies that make you scream, and everything in between. We love hearing from you, so drop us a message and let us know what movies have made an impact on your life. Before we dive into this week's episode, here's a sneak peek of the next 4 weeks on the Movies That Make You podcast. Next week, it's the last episode of the year, so we're going to be doing the best movies of 2024 with the boys. They're going to share with us which movies they saw this year that stood out at the top of the list. Not just the movies that came out this year. We're actually going to focus on the movies that we watched this year and which one stood out as their favorite. The episode after that is the first post of the new year. 2025 is here, and we'll be discussing our most anticipated films from all those that have been announced. It's going to be the boys and Kristen and I discussing that one. The week after that, we're going to be talking Paddington 1 and 2 in preparation for Paddington 3 that drops that Friday. Should be a fun time. These films are highly rated. Rotten Tomatoes has them way up. It was 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for a while. So both of the first two movies were great, and we're looking forward to the third one. The week after that, we're going to be talking Wolfman. And Kristen and I have been watching a lot of the Wolfman movies, werewolf movies, things like that, in preparation for that episode. So should be a lot of fun. Hope those episodes excite you. So without further ado, let's get to the podcast. We are back with another episode of the Movies That Make You podcast. I am Sprang, and I'm joined by my good buddy here, Grayson. How's it going, bud?
What's up, man?
Dude, we've been talking about doing the podcast for a few months now because we're going to have you on the 99 episode.
Right?
You couldn't make it, but as soon as you saw that we were doing Dracula, you're like, bro, I got to get on this.
I have to. Yeah. Yeah. Vampires have played a huge role in my entertainment throughout my life. So
Yeah,
I've always been a huge vampire fan. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
So we're going to have a lot of fun talking about a bunch of vampire movies, focusing a lot of it on Dracula, but there's still so many, like when you think about what vampires have been and how they've been portrayed, it's like there's so much in pop culture zeitgeist that it's like, but it all stems from this one story, and that's just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about a lot of different movies. We're going to deep dive a little bit on some of the more Dracula focused movies, but all of this is in preparation because Nosferatu, the new one, drops this week, Christmas Day. Go see some Dracula killing people, celebrate Jesus' birth, and see some people get killed. But that drops this week, so we're excited for that. We like to do a little catch up a lot of times, but I think just to kind of let people get to know you and your background with movies, like what is it that inspires you about movies? Where did that come from? That love for movies, and like, what do you have a favorite like movie series that you can point back to?
Man, that's tough. You and me are really it's really hard to pick like a favorite series or favorite movie. I can never give a straight answer. Anytime I've ever been asked that. But I will say, growing up as a kid and whatnot, I feel like most of the time my number one form of entertainment was VHS. Almost all the time. I mean, we had cable, but I don't know what it was. I was always watching a VHS tape. Like, I didn't watch live TV that much. So I just grew up with my main form of entertainment being long form media, like movies and stuff. So, and that's just continued throughout my life. I just love movies. I love a good marathon. I'll binge till my heart's content.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like the marathoning has always been fun because it's like a way to experience, like just get all the story. Like if
Right.
you can get
Yeah.
all the story in one sitting, that's a lot of fun
Yeah.
because you see things in that way, especially if it's one series or even if it's like I know you may have heard about it on the podcast before, but my brother-in-law would do a marathon like quarterly. We'll just kind of
Okay. Yeah.
and we started out doing series, so Matrix, John Wick,
Yep.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico, so like the El Mariachi series, like
Yeah.
kind of tied to that. And then we were like, well, let's branch that out and let's kind of, instead of doing a series, what if we did a theme? So the first one we did of that was crime dramas or like courtroom dramas based on race. So we did
That's cool.
um, To Kill a Mockingbird, we did A Time to Kill, and we did 12 Angry Men. And
Oh,
with
okay.
doing
Yeah.
it that way, you also get to kind of grab from different eras of movie making. So like you grab the 12 Angry Men, which is like a one room black and white film, and they never leave the room. Like you're just in that room.
Gotcha.
Then we did To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a black and white film still, but it's more in that kind of that era of that racism and things like that being
Mhm.
a big topic. And then
Right.
To Kill a Time to Kill, which was like more of a '90s thriller, but it's still kind of all of them have around that theme. So
Yeah,
we
that's
did one for this. So Kevin and I watched Nosferatu, the original black and white
good.
silent film.
Nice.
We watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I had never seen before, and then we watched The Witch, which is the director that's doing the new Nosferatu.
Oh,
His
okay.
his first feature film
Oh, that's
was
so
called The
I didn't
Witch.
know that. I didn't know the connection there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we grabbed those, and I put those on our list in Letterboxd because I think while we think when I think about movies and how like going into Nosferatu in December
Mhm.
and kind of having all of this background,
Yeah.
and understanding the character, understanding the story, understanding the director, how he makes a movie, all of that's just going to make Nosferatu have that much more
Right.
meaning and that
Yeah.
much more kind of weight to it. So when
That's
I
really cool.
so when
Yeah.
I think about the marathon idea, it's like, how can I get my mind in the space where can really get everything that this movie has for me?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times when you go to the movie, there's things that you you miss because you're out of the loop, and so I want to try and like, how can I be in the loop? You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Can you remember like what was maybe it's not your favorite genre or favorite series or whatever, but what was maybe the first movie that you remember watching as a kid?
I know for a fact the first movie I ever saw in theaters was Toy Story 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which came out in 1999.
Right. Yeah. And me and Rachel rewatched it too in prep for that, and it was really cool. And thinking back, like that's one of my earliest memories. That's like a core memory of mine is seeing that movie in the theater. I can relay it in my head very vividly. Probably also Tarzan, which also came out that year. Uh,
Nice.
grew up watching Tarzan
Mhm.
my whole life. That was probably my number one favorite childhood movie. I've probably watched that in my whole lifetime 100,000 times.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because like, and that's what I thought was fascinating about that discussion is like you being someone who's a whole like generation younger than me.
Right.
I was your youth pastor for a bit. That's how we know each
Yep.
other. We went to church together. Along with the church thing, the movie thing was also a big part of that too. I mean, we would watch movies. I know I did it maybe one year. I don't remember if it was the one that you were able to
Yeah.
attend, but we did like a movie and then like a discussion after.
Yeah. We did.
Yeah,
We did it a few times.
yeah, to try and connect the dots between like what is this movie saying and how does it compare to like our
For
faith
sure.
and
Yeah.
and how we should live our lives. So
Definitely.
that's what I try to do in the podcast, and so it's kind of fun. Now, I wouldn't say that Nosferatu is one of those that we want to emulate,
Yeah.
right? But it's still fun for discussion.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you said that vampires were a big part of your like entertainment growing up. Like,
Yeah.
what was the one iteration of vampires that is like the one that kicked that off?
So it was actually a book series.
Okay.
It started in middle school. It's like a preteen, young adult kinda, like, drama fiction series, and there's, like, 8 books. It's called, The Chronicles of Vladimir Todd. In middle school up until middle school, I didn't really read, like, a bunch of just on my own, just for fun, and then whenever I got into this series, I don't even know how I found it. I don't remember, but I just dove into it, and I tried learning everything I could about, like, the lore and, like, the writers, like, inspiration, and, like, I just dove into it, and that was what really, like, made me start to romanticize, like, vampires and, like, the stories about them and stuff.
It's wild for me because I think I don't even know where my fascination with vampires came from,
Yeah.
but I also have this like of those kind of Universal Monsters movies, like the classic
Oh, yeah.
like Wolfman, Invisible Man, Dracula, Frankenstein. Like
Right.
Dracula and vampires has always stood out to me as being like my favorite of that. When you look at that style of horror or like character, like horror character, and I
Okay.
don't even know where it came from exactly, but I just know it's played a big part in just the fun of like storytelling and things like
Yeah.
that. So what's mind-boggling to me is that Nosferatu, 1920 silent film, first depiction of Dracula on film,
Hmm. Right.
based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay.
Okay, so that book predates the 1900s.
Wow, that's crazy.
And when you look at nearly every single iteration, now there's a few variations, obviously. Some authors want to make them shiny, that's fine. There's some variations to the lure,
Right.
but all of the main things you think about when you think about vampires is in that book.
Right.
That's how
Absolutely.
impactful that book was to igniting something in our social consciousness that made
Yep.
this fascinating, that it grabbed us, and then like iteration after iteration after iteration, there are still these very basic things about vampires that all came out of that one book. So garlic, crosses,
Mhm.
holy water, needs to be invited in,
Yep.
daytime. They're averse to daytime, doesn't appear in mirrors. So
Right.
those were all in that original book. There's a couple of other things that were in that original book that aren't necessarily reiterated, but I would say that those 6 things have been almost reiterated in every
Oh,
vampire
absolutely.
story.
Yeah, for sure. And
Um,
if not, like, being part of their lore, they at least, like, joke about it. Yeah. I love when they kinda, like, play on it and, like, I don't know. They make fun of, like, being allergic to garlic or, like, yeah, I love that.
so the one I have one in my mind from Renfield, one of the most funny moments in that movie, and it's a play on that. It's a joke on that. Can you guess what it would be? It's so subtle. Nobody even says anything.
Mm-mm. I don't think I
So Renfield, so classic story.
Right?
He's in all of the Dracula stories. Renfield's like the assistant, the one that can like go and do his biddings while he's sleeping in the
Yeah.
coffin during the day. He's the one that's taking care of things. In the original Nosferatu, he's in jail eating bugs in jail, but he's like waiting for the master to come,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So in the movie Renfield, it came out last year. Story is about Renfield. He's trying to get out from under the thumb of his really needy boss. So he's at
Right.
a support group. So great, classic, just such a funny take on the idea. So in that movie, he's found a new path. He's dressed super preppy. He's
Right?
got a girlfriend. He comes home one day and Dracula's in his house.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things about Dracula is he can't enter your home unless you invite him. Well, he has a doormat that says, "Come on in."
Oh my gosh.
And all they do is he
That's
like
so great.
walks in.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage's Dracula is sitting in his kitchen, and he opens the door back, looks down, and sees the welcome mat, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Well, man, like That was my fault. My bad.
Yeah,
So it's just like, and I think that kind of goes at your point of like the humorous like kind of take
right,
on the lore and not taking it too seriously, but still honoring
for sure.
that kind of lore. So that's the one that really stood out to me from that movie. What would be if you had to pick one favorite story, vampire or Dracula story or movie? What movie would that be for you? What's your like standout? That's my Dracula or that's my vampire.
Probably Twilight.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Because after I got after the book series, once I started getting into high school and stuff, um, my older sister, 5 years older than me, really started getting into Twilight and stuff. It was around that time that the books were coming out and the movies were coming out. And once I got around like 15, 16, uh, I came into the living room one day and my sister was watching the first movie on our old like small little laptop, just like chilling on the couch watching the movie on the little laptop. And I was like, I hear so much about these movies. Like, can I watch it with you too? And she was like, I don't know. Like, it still might be a little mature for you or whatever. And I was like, just why not? Let's just watch it together. And she was like, all right, sure, why not? And ever since then, like, I was just hooked on it.
Yeah.
And I was never like really into like as it was coming out. I was not really into like the uh, development of the storyline and everything because I'm more so. I watched that movie and I was like, this is my favorite depiction of vampires so far that I've seen. And then a few years went by and I hadn't seen any of the other movies. And then once I like graduated and like started exploring more into movies a lot, I got back into the Twilight series and I watched all of them and I was like, wow, these are like really incredible.
That's
I,
awesome.
they're definitely like they're super cheesy. They're kind of cringy sometimes, but it just makes it, it makes it.
Yeah.
And I never could get off of them, and I've watched them probably I couldn't even count how many times I've watched them. But then me and my fiance started dating, and we just started watching them like crazy. I think one year we tried to challenge ourselves to watch the entire series once a month for all 12 months. And we got like 9 months in before we finally gave.
I'd say that's pretty good though.
It was
That's pretty good. It's
impressive. Yeah.
5 movies, right? Or is it four movies?
Five.
Five.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's 4 books, and then the last book is split into part one and
Yeah.
two.
And the cool thing about that series too is it does also kind of touch on like the werewolf
Yeah.
character too with
Yeah.
Jacob.
And there's actually some cool like there's a couple spin-off books that she's written too. And there's some cool like behind the scenes extra lore about that.
Yeah.
Midnight Sun, where you get the perspective of Edward in the whole first book. And uh, you get like an inside perspective of other people too, because he reads everybody's minds. And they kind of talk about like the lore of that, the werewolf thing in some of those books. It's
Yeah.
really cool. And they kind of talk about how they're not like real werewolves because they extinguished them in like far in the past, but there's something
Interesting.
else. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That's so cool. And I think we've already mentioned it once. Like, the Universal monsters were like the original horror movies back in the black and white silent
yep,
era. And Wolfman was one of those originals. So it's really cool, I think, for the Twilight series to highlight both vampires and werewolves. And what's also crazy is that we've got a Dracula movie coming out, Nosferatu, on December
yep,
25th. We have Wolfman, which is a modern take on it that's coming out in January,
yep.
and also did Invisible Man movie a few years ago with
Oh
Elizabeth
wow.
Moss.
Yep,
It was a super modern take about this character. This one is also a super modern take. This is a family in current day driving through. It looks like they get in some sort of crash. Somehow
Wow.
they're hanging from a tree in their car, and then this wolf man is
Yeah.
coming after them, and their dad gets infected gets scratched and becomes, so
That's
it's
cool.
this director is like picking these universal monsters and kind of doing a soup like
Yeah.
I
Bringing them
say
in today. Bringing them to today.
and I say
Yeah.
super modern because there's a difference between like a modern day telling of that story, which is like taking the Wolfman story and just retelling it in current society,
Yeah.
and saying, no, this is just a story and Wolfman is a part of it. Like, I think
Right.
there's a difference in my brain about how, like, it's not just a retelling of that old story. It's like, how do we make it more modern, more relevant,
Yeah.
and where it makes sense in today's culture?
And make it unique.
Yeah.
So it stands out from all the other renditions that have been done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, that's a really cool thing that I found in the Twilight series. But what also is funny is, like you said, cringy and like cheesy. Like, I'm in the theater watching, I think, the final one, and I was watching it, and I was with someone that was like had read all the books and all this stuff, and I was like, the movie's happening, and people are laughing at it, and I'm like, is this like? I would think it's like opening night, and people are laughing at the movie, like in a
Yeah.
serious moment. I'm like, are they fans or are they like trolling?
Yeah.
Like, no, that's just how it is. Like, so everybody loves the books, but
Yeah.
they also recognize, and I think there's something to be said for that. To
Definitely.
love the books but also recognize, oh yeah, it's cheesy. Oh yeah, yeah.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
that's part of the fun. That's part of why we like it so much.
Exactly. And just like any movie remake of books, I mean, they can only do so much with the time they have. And Stephanie was actually a pretty close part in making the movies, and I think they did a really good job with what they could,
Yeah.
But definitely the books are incredible too. Well, so much detail. I hadn't even read the books until like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's cool. So I for me, one of the movies that stands out about that has vampires and like is like, for me, when I think of vampires, it's this one. It's Interview with a Vampire.
Okay.
This one jumped out at me. Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt,
Hmm.
Kirsten Dunst. She's super young. She's a little girl.
Yep.
But that movie like really grabbed my attention. I don't remember when exactly I saw it the first time, but I know that when I saw it the first time, it was like, this is super
Right.
impactful. Later on down in the storyline, spoiler alert, Antonio Banderas is more this kind of like ancient vampire
Right. Yeah.
that's like got this coven, and like he's got a temple, he's got like a crypt where all his vampire like followers are all asleep, and
Right.
then Brad Pitt like sets the whole thing on fire and like kills them all. But that storyline was such an interesting take, and really
For sure.
dramatic.
Yeah.
It's also based off a book, but that's one of the ones that stands out to me about being like just like a really serious take on what it would really be like to be a vampire, to live
Right.
forever and live through all these different eras of human history, and
Yep.
how that would be not as glorious and not as awesome as it sounds to be
Right.
immortal,
Yeah.
and not to die. But I think the biggest one is that because Kirsten Dunst, she's turned when she's a little girl, like that's the age she stays, like physically,
Right.
even though she's hundreds of years old, she looks like a 10-year-old.
Yep.
And I thought that was a really nice kind of like nuance to that story that highlighted something that we hadn't really seen before in the vampire
Right.
lore.
Yeah. I think another thing that just kind of popped into my head about like what really got me into vampires is kind of like uh, the idea that they're sort of like romanticized as like anti-heroes, and sometimes, whether it's like Edward in Twilight, or Dracula Untold with
Mhm.
Orlando Bloom. Like, I love that idea because I'm really big into superheroes,
Mhm.
and I've always loved like the Flash and s- stuff like that. Where I think if I could have any superhero, it'd probably be like super speed, like the Flash.
Hmm.
Um, so I've always thought it was so cool that like here's this way that you can just like get power and anybody can have it. Sure, you have the caveat the of the negatives that come with it,
Hmm.
the blood and you can't go out in the sun and all that, but you're instantly just like given all this power.
Hmm.
And I've always thought that was really cool and
Yeah,
like an interesting idea to play on and it's so versatile to it can be used in so many different ways.
for sure. And I just have to jump off of that because speaking of superheroes, there's a couple of vampire uh, superhero characters. One
Yep.
we talked about on a podcast a while back, Morbius,
Yep.
which just came out. Well, it came out a few years ago with Jared Leto,
Yep.
and that's kind of the he's got an ailment and he needs vampire. He gets bitten by these bats and he ends up being basically like a vampire that
Right.
has all this superpower, but he has to. But the downside is he has to drink human blood in order to stay powerful and all that stuff. But the other one that we haven't talked about on the podcast before is the first Marvel blockbuster, which
Yep.
is Blade.
That's right.
Blade, for those of you that don't know, is the story of a character that is his mom was bitten while she was pregnant, and she's dying while he's being born, and so he's half human, half vampire. And the vampires
Gotcha.
in the storyline call him the Daywalker because of his half human side he can
Right.
walk around in the day and not be but he
Gotcha.
then takes it on as his life's mission because his mother was killed by being bitten by a vampire,
Yeah.
that he's going to take out every vampire that he
That's
can
super.
find.
That's super cool.
So it's
Yeah.
this really focused, really like poignant, really dramatic backstory, and then like it's just all the fun, cool, like crazy vampire stuff you can get into, plus the fighting and the killing and all that stuff that's fun to see in movies. Um,
Right.
the first movie, um, Wesley Snipes plays Blade, and it's a masterpiece. Like I remember seeing it in the theater when I was in college, and like I was just like, this is so amazing. And then to see
Yeah.
him come back and be in Deadpool versus
Oh
Deadpool and
my
Wolverine
goodness.
was
Yes.
just so classic. It was so great. It was
So
so
good.
perfect. And for Deadpool to go, there's only one blade, and look at the camera, like because Marvel's trying to remake it, like
Yeah.
trying to bring that character back. And I
Right.
think Kevin Feige definitely still wants to.
Mm.
Mahershala Ali is a great actor, and like to have him signed up to play Blade is perfect casting.
For sure.
So they just got to find the right story, the right team to kind of put that together. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. But I mean, go watch Blade. Like it's a really solid, fun.
Definitely. Yes.
Without Blade, like I don't think we get to where we are with comic book movies today, because it was such a revolutionary movie. It was
Yeah.
R-rated comic book movie about vampires, and it's just
Super
crazy.
cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
um, so a couple of the other ones on the list that I do think I want to just throw out there real quick. We talked about Renfield. We talked about Twilight. Um, one of the ones I think is super unique in the story is also based off a graphic novel, which is 30 Days of Night,
Okay.
which is the story of like the basic premise is that in this certain part of Alaska, it gets dark for 6 months out of the year
Right.
because of the
Right.
sun or whatever, Earth's axis, and so vampires come to that part of the world because they can be awake all the time and they don't have to hide, and so that's the
super
premise.
cool.
So like the beginning of the story is this this person or whatever, this sheriff, I think it's Josh Hartnett, is like it's about to be the last sunlight of the year for like the next 6 months or whatever, and this
Right.
vampire shows up, but he captures him, and then but he doesn't know he's a vampire, and then like he like tells him like you guys are in for it, and then of course the whole movie is like them trying to ward off this vampire gang
Nice.
basically.
Yeah.
So I just thought that's a really kind of play on kind of leaning into that lure, leaning into that mythology of the vampire can't be in the sun. So where would they live? Where would they
Right.
go? Well, this makes complete sense that they would
Yeah.
hide out in this place that never gets the sun for 6 months and just feast on everybody that's there, you know? So I thought that one was another cool one, as far as like the premise. Um, One of the other ones that's kind of a silly spin-off. So there was this idea of taking these classic books, and I think there's a few, but like taking these classic stories and like adding something that's horrific in it. So like
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is like the first one of this kind of like taking these classic stories and then like putting something else in there.
Right.
And they actually very recently, very soon after that movie came out, they came out with Abraham Lincoln Vampire Killer. Did you ever see
Yeah,
that one?
I've seen it.
Yeah. So
So
what?
I saw it, probably pretty close to when it came out. That might be, like, one of the first, like, gory movies that I ever saw. I don't think I've ever actually considered that, but I think that's probably, like, one of the first, like, really gory movies I ever, like, watched on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a silly premise, but I mean, it didn't do great in the theaters. It didn't have like
Right.
if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, like it's probably not great.
Right.
But the concept is like this kind of
Yeah.
very interesting kind of take, like taking something classical character,
Mhm.
something from real history, and then like throwing vampires in it, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. Um, so one of the couple of the other ones, Bram Stoker's Dracula is like basically the telling of the book.
Mhm.
Nosferatu, the silent film from 1920, is also a telling very strictly to the book, which I think is what we're going to get from the new movie. Is a
Okay.
really kind of honoring of the story.
That would be cool.
So the basic story is that this one guy is like a realtor or whatever, and there's somebody that wants to move, like a really rich person that he finds out that wants to move into town,
Right.
and so he's going to be his realtor, and it's like the best job, like the best option you could have, and so he goes over to Transylvania to meet with this rich benefactor to talk through the logistics. And so while there, he has dinner with him, and it's weird, and there's awkward things that happen while he's there. I think he gets bitten while he's there. It's odd, it's weird stuff. But he's still like, this is my dream job. Like I'm going to get so much money from this deal. And then they come back, and then this rich benefactor who falls in love with his wife and
Mm.
wants to have his wife be part of his harem or whatever.
Right.
And then it's him trying to defend against that and trying to overcome that. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, you get introduced to Van Helsing. You get introduced to like the here's how you can take out vampires. Here's how you can get rid of them. Here's how And so they're out chasing him. Like half the movie is them kind of like figuring out, okay, this guy's is bad.
Right.
We got to take him out.
Yeah.
The silent film from 1920 was really just part of that story, and then he gets taken out. He gets killed by the son trying to bite the
Right.
wife. But that's Renfield, like I mentioned before, is classically in that story as the guy that's like trying to set up everything,
Right. Yeah.
trying to set up everything in the daytime while he's sleeping.
Yeah. The 1931 Dracula is the exact same story too. Yeah.
Yeah,
The black and white, like there is sound, but it's like not all of it. There's like a lot of silence.
yeah,
It's really cool.
yeah.
But it's that still that classic story.
It's the Bram Stoker's Dracula, start to finish, like kind of truncated as far as it doesn't get into the whole story. The 1990s Bram Stoker's Dracula with Keanu Reeves and Gary Oldman, I think, fleshes out the entire story more fully,
Gotcha.
which probably also lines up with that 1931 Dracula. I started it on the day we were doing the marathon just to have on while I was kind of getting things ready.
That's cool.
And then once they got here, I stopped it because it wasn't part of the. I didn't want to like
Right.
add
Yeah.
another movie to the list because you're already watching three.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and I thought that Bram Stoker's Dracula from the 90s was a really solid movie. It definitely felt 90s, but it gave you a lot of that story, and kind of knowing from
Right.
the original, knowing the story kind of helps understand what's going on, gives you a little bit where you're familiar. So I'm super stoked, like I said, to see the new one, because if it is kind of a real like to the book retelling of this story with
Yep.
modern sensibilities, with the style of this director, it's gonna be really awesome.
Yeah. I'm so excited. I cannot wait for it. When I saw that first trailer, my mind exploded. Like I was like, I didn't even know it was like in the works or anything. So when I saw the trailer, I was just like, oh my goodness, we're getting a brand new one,
Yeah,
brand new Dracula.
absolutely, absolutely.
Super cool.
One of the other really key moments of that story from Bram Stoker's Dracula, the novel, it was in all the movies too. When they're telling that particular story, is the ship that he rides to get to London,
Right.
or in other tellings he gets to America. Um, but it also points out this is the first time I hadn't seen this in any other vampire lore, so I didn't know if this was maybe a specific to Dracula piece.
Right.
Is that he has to travel with soil from Transylvania in order to
Gotcha.
maintain his power, maintain his living. Is that he can't just live in a coffin. The coffin is filled with soil from his
Interesting.
homeland,
Yeah.
so he has to be buried in that soil, and that's kind of what sustains him.
Right.
And that I hadn't heard that or seen that, but
It's
that's
really well depicted in The Last Voyage of the Demeter too.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What was your take on that story? Because that was just came out last year.
Yeah, I thought it was super cool. I thought it was like a really good, like gory thriller, but not too much like horror with a couple of good jump scares, like it was very action packed. I love the murder mystery of it all, you
Hmm.
know. It's a really cool concept to take on like the Dracula story. I thought it was
Yeah, it's this.
really good.
It takes this long story and like takes it down to like, okay, let's just look at this one section of that story and really flesh that out and
Right.
have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Dracula was super scary. He was
Oh yeah.
huge. He was ugly. He was like
Very monstrous. Yeah.
vicious, like not just in his like I just a couple of the kills, like just slamming a dude's head
Yeah,
the ground, or like when he killed one dude and he's just sucking on his neck, and like it's just like they really leaned into
for sure.
the gruesomeness of Dracula.
Absolutely.
But really cool too, because it's kind of like that. You don't see him until about halfway through the movie, and they're like trying to figure out why are all these things happening and all
Yep.
that stuff. So, um,
And then the classic, like, the whooshes past the camera that you just barely see a blur,
yeah,
just adds that suspense.
yeah,
The whole leading up to the first, like, time you see him on screen
hmm,
just makes that moment so much better.
yeah, for sure. I think in the '60s there was another Dracula movie that I believe is the same storyline, that Christopher Lee played Count Dracula. Christopher Lee was in the Bond films.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
he was in the Lord of the Rings films. Just a super super talented actor. And oh, he's also in Star Wars as Count Dooku. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So he played Dracula at one point too. I think that was maybe the 1960s.
Okay.
But I didn't get a chance to watch that one, but definitely on my radar.
I I watched one that was 1958.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact title, but today, um yeah, leading up to this, I've been watching a few here and there, but, I watched 4 movies today, and I worked, like, 6 hours today, so
Nice.
I just put my phone up at work and watch movies.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so a couple of the other ones, and one of the other ones that I think is a cult classic. A lot of folks like this one. I've seen it one time, and it just um, for whatever reason didn't grab my attention to make me like become a super fan. But The Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah.
So Kiefer Sutherland.
Yep.
Uh, what is the basic idea of Lost Boys?
It's a really interesting portrayal of vampires because they don't really talk about it much. They don't really, like, put it out there that that's what it is until kinda near the end of the movie is when you start realizing uh, what it's all been leading to, you know?
Yeah.
I It's definitely a classic. It has that classic movie feel to it. I think it's a very interesting, take on vampires.
Yeah, came out in 1987,
Yep.
and it seems like it's from what I can remember, it's very much 1980s, and it's like
It's very 80s.
what would happen if there were some vampires in a gang in this town,
Right, yep.
and you didn't know that they were vampires and kind of how that would do. A couple of heavy hitters, though. Corey Haim also was in this, and then like I mentioned before, Kiefer Sutherland plays one of the vampires as well. So really, really cool movie. Another one you mentioned earlier was Dracula Untold, which was
Yeah.
it was Universal Pictures was trying to reboot the the Universal monsters in a cinematic universe. They even cast Van Helsing with Russell Crowe.
Mm.
He was going to be a head of this organization that's going after all these monsters. It had
Yeah.
Tom Cruise in The Mummy, and then Dracula, Untold comes out, and it's Luke Evans as uh, as Dracula. And I actually really enjoyed the movie. What was your take on Dracula Untold?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I like how they did, like, the medieval knight thing, and how he's trying to take advantage of this evil power just for a short time, just long enough so he can, save his family and his people.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun little take on it. What would it take for someone to get to that point where they have to, that's
Yeah,
their
for
only
sure.
option, and then they're like trying to do it for a good reason, right? But then
Yep.
that ends up being the downfall, and then um,
Right.
some cool variations on the lure with that with the bats and stuff that he could actually call the bats to his rescue and things like that. That was
Yep.
pretty fun. Visually, it was a good movie, um,
Yes,
and
great effects.
yeah, for sure.
Phenomenal effects.
One of the other ones that jumped out to me that I remember was John Carpenter's Vampires. John Carpenter is the director of the original Halloween movie.
Okay.
Also, a bunch of other movies from the 80s that are just solid, like kind of like action movies. And so
Right.
this one kind of follows suit. It's James Woods is the head of this vampire hunting group, and they're just going after vampires. And it's
Nice.
got all the
Yeah.
classic, like they can't come out in the day. We got wooden stake crossbows, and we've got this. So it's more of just an action take on the genre, but definitely fun to watch. One that I just watched recently that's a remake. I guess it's not necessarily a remake of the movie, but it's another take on Stephen King's Salem's Lot, which is also a story about vampires in a small town kind of thing,
Okay,
and
cool. Yeah.
kids trying to figure things out and all that stuff. So that just came out on HBO Max this year. Now it's a solid film, so I would definitely check that out if you like vampires. Another kind of take Another action take on the vampire genre would also be the Underworld series. Kate Beckinsale is the character that we follow throughout those films. I think there's like 5 or 6 of those movies, but it also has Bill Nighy as like the grandfather, vampire leader of this group. But it's like super grunge, super like goth, and
Okay. Yeah.
vampires are living in society, but they're this hidden secret group, and and she's like trying to, kind of protect her vampire clan against other
Right. Yeah.
vampires and things like that. So it's this kind of like you mentioned medieval, but it's kind of like this gang warfare, but if it was with vampires,
Okay, yeah,
family
cool.
against family, um,
Right.
werewolves, lichens come into this picture in the movies as well, and so
Nice.
it's that kind of a take. But it's more of an action take. Like she's running
Right.
around shooting 9 millimeters and stuff like that. But it's a fun kind of poppy sort of vampire movie that it's interesting. Well, the last Dracula movie I want to mention is Netflix actually has a series. It's a 3 episode series. Each episode is like an hour and a half, um, but it's called Dracula. And the first episode is kind of dives into the story, the classic story. The second episode, it has like a little twist.
Mhm.
Third episode, it has an even bigger twist.
Nice.
So if you like the Dracula story, you want to kind of dive into different variations of this story, I would suggest watching that. Like I said, it's 3 episodes, but it's an hour and a half each. But it's a really fun take on the story that kind of spans generations. Um, so the director, this is his fourth major film. He's his first breakout film, his first feature film was called The Witch.
Yep.
Super low key, very. He's really good at tone. Like in The
Yeah.
Witch, it's just small in scale, but super creepy
Yeah.
and messed up. Have you seen The Witch?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What was
Yeah,
your
it's
take?
basically what you said because, like, literally the whole movie, it's like it almost as, like, just this feeling of, like, gray wash, you know? But at the same time, it's very dramatic, and it's going this way and then that way, you know?
Mhm.
He does a phenomenal job of just creating, like, this vibe of, like, kinda, like, eeriness, like, it just gives you the heebie-jeebies, you don't know what's gonna happen, you don't
Yeah.
know what's coming, you know?
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Um, I recently we watched it for the marathon, and then just watching it again, it's just like, oh, so like it just like you're right. It's just that vibe of just like
Yeah,
creepiness, eeriness, like you don't, and it's crazy, and the tension between the family and all that stuff,
yeah.
amazing. His second feature
Incredible
film,
acting,
yes,
incredible acting.
absolutely,
So good, such a good performance.
yeah. Anya Taylor-Joy does an incredible job in that film. Even the kid actors are
I
like
know,
so crazy.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And, one of the things that I would say is the director's job is to get the performances out of their actors. Like that's their
right.
main
Yeah,
role. Like they've got cinematographers that are enacting their vision for what it is. So they're kind of passing that off to someone else in a lot of cases. But the actors getting the performance is 100% the director's responsibility
for sure.
in whatever film it is. And so to get that type of performance from those kids is 100% Robert Eggers, man. Um, so his second feature film was called The Lighthouse. Well, it's
Okay,
another small one. So he did a couple short films. He did The Witch, which is like 6 people in the cast, so
right.
super small. Lighthouse, 2 people in the cast,
Whew.
and they're basically it's similar to like you'd think of like a 30 Days of Night like situation where you're not vampires necessarily, but it's the people like locked away
Right,
in a place for a long period of time. They would go cuckoo, like in all that, like this, and so it's
for
this kind
sure.
of situation, like reminds me a little bit of The Shining. Like, hey, are you going to be okay in this hotel by yourself for 3 months?
Right,
Yeah, we'll be fine. So it's the same kind of thing. It's this kind of the senior lighthouse guy, and then there's this new recruit, which is Robert Pattinson, senior Willem Dafoe, and
mm,
it's just like it's just weird and awkward
right.
and just a lot of tension, a lot of yelling, a lot of I got done with the movie and I didn't really know what we were going for, honestly. But I listened to a podcast with him and him sharing about how true to like the time period that they were trying to be,
Gotcha.
even the film cameras they used, the
Mm,
sound effects they used,
interesting.
everything they did was period to the time of the time setting of the film. So they didn't use any modern equipment to make the film happen.
Wow.
So it allowed me to appreciate the film more because it was speaking to like his vision of what filmmaking can be, is being as authentic to
Right.
that he could be. Third film that he directed, he gets a little bit more wiggle room, and he's done two good films. People are like, all right, let's put some real money behind him. The Northman, which is also stars Anya Taylor Joy, but it's got Nicole Kidman in it, and it's got Alexander Skarsgård, who his brother is. I think it's his brother is playing Nosferatu's playing Dracula in the new film. Bill Skarsgård. So his brother plays this Northman who's the story is super epic. It's a kid whose family gets killed by these Vikings, and he hides away, and he grows up, and then he goes after them and takes them out. And so it's this tribal, like Viking tribal, which we don't really see a whole lot. I know that
I
there's a
know, yeah. I love stuff like that too. The Northman is a great movie. But yeah, it's so interesting. We don't get much of that, but I feel like there's so much that can be told with like Vikings and stuff.
yeah. So you like the Northman?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Super grungy, gritty.
Mhm.
Yeah. Super gritty. Um, just feels visceral, you know.
Oh, for sure.
It does reminisce of the witch, of like that just raw like
Yes.
emotion feeling. You just feel something when you walk
Yeah.
away from it.
It's very
Um,
dark
yeah,
and moody. Yeah.
yeah. So that's just talking through those three. It's just kind of giving you a little taste of the director's sensibility, and what he's capable of. So now you drop him into 2024. You give him a budget. You say, "What's your favorite movie? What's the most inspiring movie?" He says
Yeah.
Nosferatu, that he wants to retell that story. So he's super passionate about it.
Yeah.
One, he's super talented. Two,
Mhm.
and he's got the backing of the studio, and he's got the success record. So I don't
It's
want to overhype the movie, but I just feel like this can't lose.
yeah, I mean, the history is there,
Yeah,
right? Um, personally, I didn't even know the connection of all that until I'm not, like, really huge on, like, looking into directors and stuff. Um, Not that I don't like doing that, I just haven't in the past.
sure.
I need to start doing it more because that's so cool. I didn't even know that all these movies were connected, and I've seen all these movies completely separate of each other, and
Yeah,
then now to see it all come together and know that he is doing this one was that's I makes it even more cool for me. I can't
yeah,
wait. Yeah.
for sure. I mean, for anybody that's um, kind of interested in when movies are released and why that's important,
Mhm.
is summers are the big summer blockbusters. It's like the big money makers. They're gonna drop movies every weekend, and they're hoping to make, $1 billion. Not all of them, not many of them do, but that's the goal, because it's the big summer tentpole, big blockbusters. Um, Once you get out of the summer, you get a little bit of wiggle room, where it's just like, these are let's just throw some horror stuff out there because it's getting close to October, and
Right.
let's low budget stuff. Let's get some stuff out there that's going to hopefully get some people in the seats, but we're not dropping huge money. As you get past October, what you're really diving into is Oscar worthy movies,
Right.
really solid movies. They want the last movies that the Academy, the members of the Academy, which are this body of group of writers, directors, actors, everybody is a part of this Academy. They're members of this Academy. They want the last movies that they see in the year to be the ones that the studios feel are the most
Worthy.
epic worthy to be nominated and to hopefully get that little golden statue. And so Christmas is super coveted. A lot of times what you'll see that that movies are released like in limited release
Right.
in December, and then wide release in January. What they're hoping with that is that they release it, and then critics go, "This movie's amazing."
Right.
And then they release it, and they can say, "Hey, this movie's amazing. This critic said it. This critic said it.
Right.
Go see it."
Yeah.
Because it's usually some movies that aren't going to have a huge crowd to follow because they don't know what it is, and they don't know
Gotcha.
what it's not worth
Yeah.
their money. But if they can do it in a
Kind
couple
of
of
like
theaters,
focus group it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So the fact that it's a December 25th, it's crazy. We got 3 or 4 films releasing on Christmas Day this year that are all
Wow.
different genres.
What
Um,
else is releasing on Christmas Day, off the top of your head?
So one of the other ones is a boxing movie. It's about a female boxer
Okay.
that won the gold medal for boxing, first
Nice.
American gold medal in years in female boxing, and then it's her kind of coming back to the States after that, realizing this gold medal means nothing because I'm still living in poverty almost. I still have
Right.
no recognition of my win,
Yep.
of my abilities, and so then she's like, if you're gonna have me do this again, I'm gonna need the endorsements. I'm gonna need all this stuff. And so and she's like, it's not just
Trying
for
to
me, it's
trying
for
to get her trying to get herself what she deserves.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Like all these other athletes are getting all this stuff. Where's mine? Like I did the same work, I put in the same effort, I won the same gold medal that these other people did. I feel like I should get this. So it's kind of like this really nice rising, like from the bottom, to the top type of story. So two other movies of note that are coming out on December 25th. One is the story of Bob Dylan. A Complete Unknown is the name of the movie. It's got Timothy Chalamet playing Bob Dylan,
Oh
and
my
it's
goodness.
basically like his biopic of rising to stardom as Bob Dylan. So a music piece. Another music one, it's called Better Man, which is actually
Hmm.
the story of a British pop star, Robbie Williams. But the interesting thing is, he's like, I'm not a conventional guy. I'm not like everybody else. I feel like I'm actually a little bit less evolved than other people. So in the movie, his character is an ape. And he's still singing, he's dancing, he's part of the, like, it's his, basically think like the Elton John biopic, but
Hmm.
instead of Elton John wasn't played by Taron Egerton, it was played by a monkey. Like,
Gotcha.
but
Yeah,
it's like it's interesting kind of, but I mean,
that's crazy.
it's a crazy concept,
Yeah,
but the fact that it's being released in December 25th, I mean, it looks super intense and emotional and all that stuff. And
that's
just kind
wild.
of get over that idea that it's
What a
an,
crazy concept.
yeah, just wild. Now, take that, and then you also have the other guy, Pharrell Williams, who
Yep.
came out with his biopic where he's doing the
Ooh,
whole thing in Lego. So I
Lego.
mean, it's
Yeah,
just anything goes, man. Like,
crazy.
it's an interesting time, and I think it's the boxing movie I did want to mention was The Fire Inside. So some really
Okay.
solid movies coming out December 25th.
Nice.
I know we've got our tickets for Nosferatu already. We might hit one of the other ones. The Bob Dylan film really intrigues me because I think he did all of, like,
I'm
Timothy
definitely gonna
Chalamet
have to see
did the
that.
singing and everything too. So should be good.
That's awesome.
Cool, man. Well,
Yeah,
dude, appreciate you coming over and
of
being a part of
course.
the podcast, man.
Of
We'll have to
course,
do it
man.
again for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. You got anything else you want to say? What else you got going on? You're getting married.
I'm getting married,
Yeah,
and this guy sitting across from me is gonna be standing next to me.
that's right, bro. I got my bow tie. I got my socks. I'm
Yeah,
I'm ready, man. I'm ready. Got the suit on order.
groomsman.
Yeah. It's gonna be
Woo!
fun, man. So happy for you.
So excited, yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming up quick.
Yeah.
It's next month.
I know. It's wild.
So crazy.
Yep.
Oh.
Well, cool, man. Well, you'll have to come back on and we'll have to talk, do something with wedding movies.
Oh,
Four weddings and a funeral,
I don't
my
know,
best friend's wedding. Like,
after January, I think I'll be done with
yeah,
weddings for a
weddinged out.
while.
Yeah, I got you. Well, cool, man. Again, dude, thank you so much for being a part of it. Like, this is super fun. I
For
enjoyed
sure,
it.
I would love to come back.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I was nervous at first because 'cause I've never done anything like this, but yeah, it was fun. It was really cool.
Thanks so much for listening to the Movies That Make You podcast, where movies are a catalyst for meaningful conversations. We hope you'll give us a like, a share. Let us know you were here over at our Instagram at Movies That Make You. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. So until next time, keep watching movies.